Mats like this are really common in dogs with long and curly coats. In this video, I'll demonstrate a few different ways on how to get rid of them. A mat often starts out as just a few tangles in your dog's fur, but they can quickly progress into clumps of tangled fur that becomes tightly woven together like this. Mats can often trap dirt, debris and moisture close to your dog's skin, and then over time the mats can continue to tighten and pull on your dog's skin. This can cause them pain, restrict their movement, and it can even lead to irritation and infection if they're not removed. Mats develop in high friction areas where there's been rubbing. Some common areas include behind the ears. Poppy has a mat here behind her ear from where her sister Soda playfully chews her ears. You can also find them around the collar where the collar has been rubbing, under the arms due to the hair rubbing when your dog walks, or anywhere around the harness that's been rubbing on the fur, under the tail. Poppy gets a lot of mats under her tail because she's always wagging her tail, so when she's sitting her tail rubs on the floor and that friction causes mats. If your dog wears any clothing, like a jacket for example, anywhere the jacket sits can cause mats from rubbing on the fur, and I often find them on the back of the legs and also on their private areas. The best way to ensure your dog doesn't develop any mats is to brush their coat at least a couple of times a week, paying particular attention to where their collar, harness and any clothing has been. Always give them a brush before and after you bath them. Water can make mats worse. They can tighten as they dry, which means they'll be even harder to get out. So it's best to remove them from their coat before giving your dog a bath. Now if your dog ends up getting a mat, there's a few ways you can remove it depending on how big and tight it is. For mats that don't look too bad, I like to start with my slicker brush. Sometimes this is all you need to remove a mat. First you find the mat and then hold the fur above it before you start brushing. Brushing it will pull the fur and irritate your dog, so if you hold the fur above the mat, this will minimize the pulling. If brushing doesn't detangle the mat, the next step is to use a dematting tool. I like to use the Showtech dematting tool, which has 11 serrated blades, which cuts through the mats to break them up. Again, you hold the fur above the mat so it doesn't pull too much, and then you start combing through the mat gently. You'll see the mat will start to break up, and you can also use your fingers to help break it up further. You continue to comb through the mat until the dematting tool doesn't get stuck on any tangles and it can easily glide through the fur. If the mat is quite tight, you can cut into it with your straight scissors to help break it up. Once you've cut into it, you can try and separate the mat a little bit with your fingers and then resume with your dematting tool, combing through to try and get rid of that mat. And there we go, there's a big chunk of the mat that we've just combed out. Now I'm just going to brush through the fur again with my slicker brush just to make sure I've gotten rid of all the knots and tangles. I can just feel a little knot here, so I'm just going to try and pull it out with my fingers. There we go. And now I'm just going to comb through with the comb just again to just triple check there's no more knots left in there. Okay, that feels pretty good to me. So there is a little bit of a mat left, so I'll just repeat that same process. First, I'm going to try and break up that mat as much as possible with my fingers. And then I'm going to use my dematting tool and I'm just going to comb through until the mat has been removed. And then once the comb combs through freely, I'm going to use my slicker brush to brush through just to make sure I've gotten rid of any remaining tangles and knots. And then I'm going to use the comb again as well, just to brush through, again, just to triple check there's no more mats or knots left in her ear. Another option to get rid of mats is to simply use your scissors and cut them out. The beauty of the dematting tool is that it layers the fur or thins it out, which means it doesn't look as obvious when there's fur missing as cutting out a chunk of fur with the scissors. However, if you don't mind a hole in your dog's coat, definitely use scissors. It's a lot quicker, and use scissors if your dog gets irritated by the pulling of the dematting tool or if they're old and can't sit for long. However, be very careful using scissors, especially around the ears or underarms, as you can very easily cut the ear leather or loose skin around the armpit. For these areas, I recommend using mini trimmers to shave the mats off. I also recommend using mini trimmers to remove mats behind the ears, on the private areas, and in between the toes. For any mats that are really close to the skin and you can't get your dematting tool or scissors between the skin and the mat, use your mini trimmers or clippers to shave them off so you don't accidentally cut and injure your dog. If mats are severe, tight, or too close to the skin, it's best to seek help from your professional groomer or local vet. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more at-home grooming tips. See you next time.